2020 anymore, can we?
It's probably for the best. Shorter names are easier to say.
True, true, true.
In our first episode of 2021, we'll be foregoing our usual format of 3 games each to instead talk about one game we've been playing a little more in depth. Adam will be covering Assassin's Creed Valhalla, while I will be reviewing Cyberpunk 2077. And with that, Adam, would you like to start?
Don't mind if I do. Quick heads up, I have reviewed this game before, so I will likely not go into too much detail because I have done that before. Uh, but that's okay because it's going to give Krian a little more time to talk about a game that we have not reviewed yet, so that's a good thing. All right, so real quick rehash. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, released by Ubisoft, developed by Ubisoft, and its release date was November 10th, 2020. So that gives you an idea of how long I've been playing it. I checked yesterday. I'm about, I think, 56 hours into it now. So I am chugging along relatively slowly, which is quite unfortunate. But hopefully I'll be done with it relatively soon so I can move on to something else. It is available on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Stadia. So real quick kind of overview without too many spoilers. You take on the role of Eivor, and Eivor is a member of the Raven clan. They are a Viking group. You start off in Norway, and your king, who is kind of your adopted father, basically another king has come along. He says, I want to unify all the clans under one big kingdom, and I'm going to be the king of that. And your king said, sure. And because of that, your adopted brother basically says, well, that's not fair that you're giving away my crown without my consent. And so your group decides we're going to leave Norway and head off to England and create our own little settlement there. And that's basically where the game's kind of really takes off, is when you hit England. So that's the little background behind it. And from there, you're doing your basic Assassin's Creed things. The Assassins actually aren't, at least where I am, super involved in the game just yet. They are in there. There are 2 assassins that are kind of part of your group, and they are kind of helping you out. But basically, in this game, you do have settlement building, and one of the buildings you can build in your settlements is the Assassin's Den, I guess you would call it, which is kind of the place where the assassins are hanging out. And basically, once you build it, the guy says, well, we haven't been in England for over 200 years or however long since the fall of the Roman Empire. So I want you to go out, find these old assassin bases, collect some old assassin relics, and we'll learn a bit of our own history. And that's basically it. Other than that, you're not really associated that much with the assassins. You're actually more associated with your Viking clan and kind of creating your little niche or little area within England. I do think they are going to take off a little bit later, because I know that the overlying story, again, is there's a big natural disaster, the world's going to end, and somehow Eivor is key to how they solved this in the past. So I'm sure the assassins are going to become much more important and much more relevant later. But as of right now, and I don't know how far I am. I'm a little less than halfway through the trophies, so I was assume that means I'm a little bit less than halfway through the game. But yeah, as of now, they're not super important. But yeah. So basically, the things that I like about this game are the exploration, which I went over last time. You can basically go anywhere you want. So you can climb almost any surface. You can scale buildings and all that. So I really think that's really great. I do like the weapon variety. However, there is not a one-handed sword, which is kind of strange. I do like the Sayax, which is basically just a really big knife. But yeah, it's kind of a strange that they have two-handed swords, but they don't have one-handed swords. However, if you go down the tech tree, I guess you would call it, there is an ability that allows you to hold two-handed weapons in one hand. So you can hold 2 spears, or you can hold 2 giant axes. It's a little bit broken in terms of that it gives you like way more variety, but I would say unlock that one pretty early if you can. Also, you can do stealth if you want. I do have in the video, there is a segment where I'm trying to do stealth, and you can see that the stealth, sometimes it works really, really well, and sometimes it gets really, really wonky. There are things that you wouldn't really expect. For example, I've noticed that if I assassinate a guy and he's standing next to incendiary jars, assassinating him will set off the jars and explode and alert everybody.
Oh no.
So it's actually, yeah, it's really weird. So if I run up next to him and you use the hidden dagger, you just stab him, he goes down, and when he falls, something about the fact that you attacked within range of these incendiary things, they explode, which not only create a big sound to attract other guys, it also sets you on fire. So it's not a really good thing. So I've actually noticed you're better off and if that is happening, to just shoot the guy in the head with an arrow and kill him that way. Because if you do it that way, they don't explode. I don't know. It's a weird. I don't know if it's a glitch or what's going on there, but that's kind of a weird thing. But you can definitely stealth it out. Once they do figure out where you are, it can be hard to get back into stealth, but it is possible. I also really like that actually this game has lots and lots of side quests, but they're all extremely short. So most of the side quests you could probably finish in about 5 minutes, and they're usually directly involved in what you're doing in that moment. So, for example, one was I walk into this old abandoned church, and there's this kind of shoddily made throne thing. I sit down in it. These guys say, "Hey, that's the throne of our king." And then they show up, and then I kill them, and that was the entire side quest. And it was like, oh wait, that was yeah.
That
It's just
sounds perfect.
it's just kill these groups of enemies. Um, or in other cases, the side quest might be a little more in depth. Like there was one where there's an old man who's suffering from dementia, and you kind of have to follow him around on this tour and kind of play along with his little game. And uh, so things like that, they can be a little bit longer, but none of them are more than say 10-15 minutes. They're all really, really short. None of them are, at least none of the ones that I've experienced so far, involve running around the map and doing all that. So actually it works really, really well. And most of them just kind of don't really add to the story, but they add to the world. They add to the environment. They make the people seem more real, or they kind of show you what's going on in these people's lives, like helping these starving children. They don't have food or something, so you can kind of play a game with them and then give them some money or something like that. So they're usually pretty short. I've also found hunting to be strangely relaxing. I haven't done too much fishing yet. Apparently, fishing is actually not fishing; it's killing fish. So you either get into shallow water and stab them to death with your swords and spears, or you shoot them with arrows. I thought it was going to be like actual fishing, but there's no actual fishing. It's just killing fish. But hunting is strangely relaxing. I just like to sometimes just go out and be like, I'm just going to kill a few deer now, and just chase them down and all that. And also the leveling is pretty quick, so you can get new abilities and stuff relatively quickly. It doesn't seem to slow down the speed at which you get levels. I know in other games, like as you level up higher, the requirements to reach the next level become higher, and you have to basically kill enemies at your level because lower level enemies are not going to give you the relative amount of experience. In this game, it seems that all enemies will give you a set amount of experience regardless of their level, and leveling is a flat number between each level. So if you're level 15 and you want to go to level 16, it's going to be, I don't know, say 100 experience points. And if you want to go between level 190 to 191, it's still 100 experience points. And killing even the most basic guy is still going to give you 10. So you can actually level quite quickly, which is kind of nice because, yeah, I'm not really happy with the leveling system. But we'll get into that later. So far, after talking about things that I've liked, any questions
Oh, loads of
this
questions.
far in? Okay.
Just to clarify for our listeners, you should definitely go back and watch our first episode, which was God Valhalla, where we talked about Godfall and Valhalla. And between that game and now, how many additional hours have you put in at it?
Back then I was around 12. Now I'm at 56. So that would be what, 44 hours, give or take?
All right. That's great. With that being said, so I mean, with an extra 40 hours, are you feeling more attached to the story, to the characters, or more about the same?
As far as attachment to the characters and the story, I'm probably feeling about the same. I don't feel any more invested than I previously was. Um, in some ways, I'm enjoying the game more, and in other ways, I'm starting to see the areas that are lacking more
Okay.
because they're not fresh anymore. So, it's a give or take. I'm still definitely enjoying it and still having a lot of fun. but yeah, some of the cracks are starting to show. Uh, but as far as plot and characters, I'm not that much more invested in them. The Eivor you see at the beginning is pretty much the Eivor that she still is at this point in the game. The other characters haven't really dynamically changed that much. So currently, everybody's kind of still two-dimensional. We haven't really had any three-dimensional development yet. Uh, but I have been doing quite a bit of exploration, and I haven't been doing quite as much of the main story. I've done a few of the main stories, but yeah, so far it's pretty standard fare. You come in, there's a king or something. That guy's like, I don't like this old king. We need to take him out so I can take the throne. Great, we took it. Good job. Go over there and get us the next ally. Oh hi, I'm your next ally. Uh, I was attacked by these guys and they took my town. Help me get my town back. Great, you killed that guy. Now it's my town again. It's not really. It's more of like you're running errands at this point, because the idea right now is that you're new in England and you need allies. So I'm going from uh, I don't know what you call them, county to county or area to area, and each area you can pledge yourself to that area, and then you do the quests for that area. But so far, none of those quests have really tied into each other. So it's you go over here, and that's one story, and then you go back to your base, and then you go over here, and then you get a new set of characters, and you do that next part of the story, and you're trying to get allies so that you can kind of really cement your position in this new country.
Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of the combat, in terms of the like naval action and that kind of stuff, has combat or ship combat evolved in a way that or has certain things evolved in your extra 40 hours that you're like, oh my God, I like this better than I did before, or any terms of
Uh,
mechanics or
so I was really hoping there would be ship combat because I really loved it in Black Flag. I know a lot of people hated it, but I absolutely loved ship combat. I would just go out there and just capture as many ships as I possibly could. So I was hoping there would be some kind of naval combat. Obviously, you couldn't do it with, say, cannons and whatnot, but maybe boarding actions or something like that. There actually is no ship combat, at least at this point in the
there
game.
is no ship
There's
combat.
no ship combat. In fact, I have not seen any ships other than my own, with the exception of you'll have some little fishermen on some little, rowboats or something like that. But there has, at this point in the game, been no ship combat, and I'm guessing that if I haven't met it yet, it's not going to be showing up. So yeah, unfortunately, I was hoping for ship combat just to see how interesting it could be. That's not a thing there. The raids are kind of interesting. They're not super deep. Basically, you just charge your boat at an area, you charge it into the shoreline. All your guys get off, and they all just run around, and you're all just looting and trying to clear out an area. Unfortunately, there are only a limited number of raids in the game. You can re-raid an area, but there's no real good reason to do it,
Okay.
because the reason you're raiding is because these monasteries or the areas that you're raiding have goods that you need. So they have riches and they have supplies. So you go in there, you raid them, you get all these supplies, and you use those supplies to build up your base, your town, your village. And once you've raided a place, then none of those goods respawn. So you have no real point to go and raid them again. You could do it, but basically all you would be doing is killing the respawning enemies, and you wouldn't really be gaining anything from it. So that's good in a way, because I mean, it makes sense, and you can't just farm raids over and over and over again. But at the other hand, it's kind of, once I've raided everything that's kind of within my level, I just have to play the game to level up, and I have to stop raiding until I've leveled up to a point where I can successfully begin raiding again. So, but yeah.
Oh no, that's because I mean, like, I never played Black Flag, but I played Odyssey, and I loved the Greek sea shanties, and I loved the oh God, I forgot his name, but the guy and on the Greek boats, and he says shoot, and all the arrows fly out from one boat to the other boat, and it was so fun, and I'm like, oh
Yeah.
cool, I would love some Viking sea shanties and be able to do that, but I guess not.
Yeah, that's the other kind of disappointing thing, is because I played Black Flag again, and there were tons of sea shanties in it, just tons of them, and they were really fun. These are like traditional sea shanties that they added to the game, and the way they added it to the game actually really made it feel like the guys on the ship were singing, because I guess they got a real group of people to sing it, and I guess they had them maybe when they recorded it, they were singing outdoors or whatever. But the sound of the sea shanties in Black Flag really kind of sounded like the guys on the ship are singing these songs, and and they'll
Nice.
kind of call out to each other and whatnot and have fun with it. In Valhalla, you have mostly it sounds like a guy playing a lute, and there was one song that they sung, and that was it, and it was just a one guy singing. It wasn't like the crew singing together, so it wasn't as much fun. I did do one side quest where I met this guy who was like an older Viking, and he had retired, but he was a poet, and so he was writing some of his own songs. So after I did his quest, I did unlock, I think, maybe one or two new songs, but all of them kind of sound like they were recorded in a studio. So the guy singing sound has like a really clear voice. It doesn't sound like that kind of outdoors, like the voice is going out into the wind kind of sound to it. So it does sound very studio made, and it doesn't really have that same feel that Black Flag did with the sea shanties. So I was kind of disappointed in that. So a lot of times I will switch over, because you do have the option of either listening to the song, or you can have members of your crew tell stories. And so I think the crew telling stories is a little better, in my opinion, than the sea shanties in this one, just because the stories actually do sound more like the crew's talking, because you have one person telling a story. Occasionally other members of the crew will interrupt and like make a joke, or kind of tease the guy or whatever. They'll laugh at some of the jokes in the story. So I think those to me are a little more immersive, but there aren't that many of them. And unfortunately, the game, one feature that I really like was in The Witcher 3, when I played it, it says if you're running and you run along a path, the horse will naturally run along the path where you can kind of let the controller go, or at least just hold down the run button, and the horse will auto run along the path. But pathing was not very good for the horse, and so if there was a sharp turn or even just a slight turn, sometimes your horse might just go running off into the forest, and it wouldn't follow the path anymore. And then you'd have to manually guide it back. And this one, it hard locks you to the path if you're riding your horse, or if you're in the boat, it will hard lock you to the river. So you can literally just put down the controller and sit back or go make a sandwich or something, and they'll continue on to wherever they're going. So that's really good. And if they're telling stories, it's good. But every single time you pass an area where you can possibly raid, from every little small fishing village to every monastery to every castle, anytime you get close to them, Eivor calls out and she says, like, raid or whatever. And then the story will stop. Everybody gets quiet. And then you can either go in and raid, or you can just sail past it. And then once you've sailed past it a certain distance, then Eivor will say something like, okay, carry on. And then they continue the story. And it's just really, it's kind of disrupting, because there are so many of these places that you can, theoretically raid, that it's just no story. You're going to hear it all the way through. It's almost always going to get cut off at least 3 times, just because you're passing all these little fishing villages and stuff like that. So, slight annoyance for me, but
Okay.
it's not a game breaker.
Okay. Okay. I mean, that's all the questions I have so far. What about the stuff you didn't like?
Okay, so there are some things that I didn't like. So far, the enemy levels are a bit wonky. So if I go into a certain area, it'll tell you what the level of that area is. So it'll say recommended level, maybe 160. So I go into that area and I'm expecting, enemies should be a level 160, quests should be around a level 160, whatnot. Well, sometimes, for instance, they have these guys called zealots, and zealots are guys that you can kill, and they'll give you clues to find members of the, I don't remember what they call it, the secret order or whatever, basically the proto Templars. And they have their members, and then these zealots have information that will lead you to these members. So if you kill the zealots, then you can get information that'll allow you to do that. Uh-oh, did my Skype cut out?
No, no, you're
Oh,
still
no, it's
here.
still good. Okay, it went boop, boop. So,
Uh,
all right, so you can kill these guys, and then it'll give you hints as to where to find the bigger dudes. Now, for example, and there's a video of it that I have in my clip. I'm running through an area. I'm level 190, and I'm running through an area that's 120 or 160. So it's pretty far below my level. So I should be safe. I run into a zealot in that area, and I think, okay, I'm going to kill this guy so I can help find these hidden order dudes, right? Well, I get to fight this guy, and I am hitting him, and his life is just chipping away ever so slowly, just doop, 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 tiny, tiny, tiny little pieces of life. And I'm just not really doing damage to this guy. And I'm like, what's going on here, right? He hits me. He does maybe, 60% to 75% of my life in one hit. And I'm like, what is up with this? So I'm trying to fight this guy for a really long time. I'm not doing very well. So finally, I have to run away. And one of the things about these zealots is they will track you to the ends of the earth. So you really have to run away, get to a river, swim across the river, keep running into the forest, go through a village. You have to run halfway across the map to get these guys off your trail. Because that was a thing one time too, where I was trying to do a certain quest. I just happened to run past a zealot. He spotted me. I didn't realize that he had spotted me. I kept running. I ran, way to the other side of the map. I'm fighting this one guy that I'm supposed to. And about halfway through the fight, this zealot comes running up over the hill because he had followed me halfway across the map, you know. So, and then I had to deal with him as well. But anyway, the reason that I was doing so poorly against the zealot is because I'm level 190. I'm in a 160 zone. This zealot is 290.
oh, Jesus.
Yeah, so he's basically almost twice the level of the recommended level for this zone. And so because of that, the enemy levels can be really kind of awkward sometimes where you think you're in an area that you should be able to handle, and then there's just this one enemy that's just way over leveled for that area, and you don't expect it. I've had other things where I'm in an area that says it's level 120, and then I do a quest, and the quest is leveled, 260 or something like that. So definitely sometimes you can get yourself into trouble without even realizing it because you're trying to play relatively safe, but then it turns out that, yeah, it's really weird. And because of that, I would actually really have preferred if they had done horizontal leveling rather than vertical leveling, because early on in the game, you really don't have that many abilities. You basically have your basic attacks. And like I said, you can't equip 2 heavy weapons. You can only equip light weapons, or 1 heavy weapon with 2 hands. And you have your assassinate, and that's basically it. As you go through the game, you unlock abilities like you'll see me do Valkyrie dive, where Eivor jumps into the air and stabs down really, really hard. Or there's like an ability where you charge into the enemy and you push him to the ground. You can punch him in the face. You can shoot a harpoon into a guy and kind of yank him to the side and slam him against walls. So you unlock these abilities or options much, much later. And you also, going through your tree, you're unlocking new abilities like planting bombs on dead bodies, or being able to shoot your bow at a much, much faster speed. So one of them is you pull back and you hold it, and then when you release, it'll fire. You can get an ability that basically, as soon as you pull back, Eivor will automatically release, so you can shoot much, much faster. So things like that. Or if you walk past an enemy and they spot you, you can hit L1 real quick, and Eivor will quickly aim to that guy, and then you can shoot him real fast. So as you're going through, you're gaining all these new abilities and new techniques that are really going to help you out throughout the game. And I think that would have been enough. I don't think they need this leveling of like, okay, this guy is way over leveled for you or something like that. Because a lot of times it does just get tedious where it's skill wise, I could defeat this guy. For instance, I can get this guy down to about half health. He's twice my level. I can get him down to half health, but if he hits me, he's going to take out 90% of my life. So if he 2-shots me, I'm dead. So I have to make no mistakes. I can only take off like 2% of his life at any given time. So because of that, the fact that I got him down to half life is pretty significant. but he has an ability where he drinks a potion and it heals him up maybe 10%. So again, in the video, you can see there's a part where I got the guy down to about maybe a quarter, or I got him down to maybe 75 or 60% of his life. And then he just pops a potion. And you can see his life go boop, 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 boop. And he basically just full heals himself again. And it's kind of like all that work was for nothing. So that's kind of annoying. I wouldn't mind it as much if things were accurate to their positions. But yeah, when I'm running through a low level area and I'm just going to clear out this area and there's a guy there who's vastly over leveled, it's kind of annoying because A, I don't know what to expect, and B, because that means that I can't clear the area. I have to remember in my head, there's a guy over there that I'm going to have to come back to, and he's the only thing I need in this area, but I need to basically get another 100 levels, and then I need to come back just for that one guy.
Wow.
And as a completionist, that's kind of annoying to me because it means that, like it's just really irritating when you're like, I can clear everything but this one thing. So for me, that was very frustrating. But it is what it is. I think actually in the settings, you can actually change it so the levels don't matter as well. So I think I could actually change it if I wanted to. I just haven't done it. But as I said, some of the fights can be very tedious. Healing enemies is really annoying. Enemies have this ability to interrupt your attacks, but you can't do the same. So occasionally they'll do a regular attack, and then they'll have attacks that have kind of a yellow rune will show over their head, and then there's an attack that has a red rune over their head. The attacks with the red runes, you cannot block. You have to dodge. It's the only thing you can do. The ones with the yellow ones, you can parry them, but they're harder to parry. And then, of course, you can parry regular attacks as well. But, for example, if you get into an enemy and you're just slam, you're hitting him, he might get knocked out for a couple times, but then he can block mid-attack. But if the enemy gets into the same kind of series with you where they're attack, you can't block them in the middle of their flurry. You have to basically somehow wait for an open window to roll out or something like that. But if they're in the middle of an attack, there's no real way to get around it. And because you have limited stamina, if you're trying to constantly dodge attacks, you'll eventually run out of stamina, and then they can just wail into you. So that's really annoying. Sometimes kind of too as well. I would have done something probably closer to what Ghost of Tsushima did, where parrying was a much, much bigger part of the game, but you could pretty much do it at all times. There were instances in Ghost of Tsushima where you couldn't, but it wasn't. Usually there was some kind of lead up to it. Like, for instance, you would see the person sheath their sword, and the next attack is going to be unblockable. Not they just go and, from 5 attacks in a row and then just go into an unblockable attack usually. So you can kind of learn their patterns. And this one, there's not really much of that. Another thing that kind of bothers me is the puzzles. So a lot of times I'll go into an area, I'll see, like, if you're within 60 meters of something and you do a scan, it'll show you this is treasure, this is armor, it'll show you what all the nodes are. And a lot of the times you can figure it out and it'll be underground. Like 90% of the time it's underground. And the puzzle isn't figuring out the puzzle. The puzzle is figuring out, how do I get underground? And that can be kind of annoying because a lot of times the rear entrance is really, really obvious, but the front entrance is hidden somewhere way off where you have to find it, and it can be really kind of annoying. For example, there was one time where there's a little town, and I'm trying to find just outside the town, there's some armor, and there's a little hut, and the hut has a locked door, and the door is locked from the inside. And so I know that this hut would give me access to this armor, but I can't find how to get underground to get the armor. I can only find the exit. And basically what I had to do was I had to go into town, and in the town, there's a section of the town where it's old Roman ruins. And in the old Roman ruins, there's one part where it's kind of like a tower that's been hollowed out. So you have to climb up that tower, climb down back in the inside of the tower, and then there's a panel on the ground that you can smash. And then from there, you can go into kind of an underground catacombs kind of thing, and then work your way back out from the town. And then that's how you would find the armor. And once you're in there, they have puzzles like, oh, okay, throw this switch or smash this door, all that. Those are actually really, really easy. 90% of the time, if I'm trying to unlock something, I spend 80% of my time just trying to find, how do I get in? And then the 20% of the remaining 20% is actually figuring out the puzzles. So That's kind of an irritating thing because it's not hard, it's just tedious. It's just okay, let's just run back and forth all over the map until we find a cave. Yeah, like that's not really a puzzle to me. So uh, that's annoying. And then another thing that kind of annoys me is the some of these things you know how to do it. Like for instance, I'll see something. I should go here. I go here. There's nothing. It's a blank wall. What am I supposed to do? Turns out, so I'll spend a long time on it, and I'll actually go and I'll look it up, and I'm like, how do I unlock this thing? I can't find it. I've spent 30 minutes trying to find it, and it says, oh, you need to progress this far into the story to do it. And so that's kind of annoying sometimes that you'll see a secret and it's kind of obvious how you should do it, but you can't do it just because you haven't progressed far enough in the story. And there's no indication of that. So you could end up wasting a lot of time trying to figure out this, because sometimes entrances are hard to find. You just think this isn't it. It must be somewhere else. But it turns out, no, that is it. But you're just not far enough. And you just wasted all this time trying to figure it out. And if you hadn't looked it up online, there'd be no way. You'd either just give up and move on or whatever. So that's annoying. And the only other problem I really have is the combat's okay. I like the fact that they have a lot of weapon variety, but there's not a lot of combat variety. I've just found mostly I just mash light attack over and over and over again, and that's basically it. That's how I kill everything. It's just light attack, light attack, light attack, light attack, light attack, light attack, light attack. There's not a lot of depth to it. You can parry, but there's no real. It really is just run in there, stab the guy, and stab him multiple times. Um, the weapons do add a little bit of variety, especially on your offhand weapon. So, for example, with the Sayax, what Eivor will do is charge forward, stab several times, and then kind of do this backwards dodge thing. If you have a two-handed sword, she'll run forward and she'll charge, and then when you release it, she'll just like this big mighty swing kind of thing. With the axes, I think she kind of does it like a spin kind of thing. So there is kind of variety there that's kind of interesting, but I don't use it 90% of the time because it's just more effective just to mash light attack. So I don't even use my heavy attacks that often. So, but yeah, so those are my major problems with the game. So, questions?
No questions so far. Because, I mean, you've explained some of that stuff before. And, I mean, but the combat stuff does kind of make sense in a way, because Odyssey was like that. Odyssey had a pretty much very simple combat, or the way I played Odyssey was just, I did a lot of range combat and tried to stay away from melee combat as much as possible. And
Yeah.
like you said, melee combat was very limited. And it's kind of I mean, I kind of like that. I can't do games with a lot of heavy combinations and stuff that requires you to have to do a lot of combos in order to actually win a fight, because that just makes me frustrated. So I'm that's kind of good. And I mean, from what the comment that I've seen is this does remind me of Odyssey in a lot of ways in terms of the combat. So I'm looking forward to it. I was just thinking actually, I'm like, oh my God, we've talked about this so much. By the time I can actually play Valhalla, it'll probably be 2022, because that's the only time I would have forgotten what you've actually said.
uh yeah, no, you can definitely do the range combat. The range combat's pretty good.
Yeah, no,
And in fact, stealth range is actually probably more viable than melee stealth. So
because I'm watching you like on the in the video right now. I see you on the rope and you're like shooting guys in the head with the arrows, and it's I'm like, oh, that looks pretty damn awesome.
yeah, and there's strategy to it, so you can kind of see where they're looking and be like, oh, okay, these two guys are facing each other. I don't want to take them out, but that guy's kind of facing away and nobody's looking at him, so I'll take him out. So there's that part's fun. I do enjoy that part.
Okay. So, I mean, getting into your last point, given you extra 40 hours, would you change your recommendation of the people who would enjoy it from your first time?
No, I think the same people are pretty much going to enjoy it. If you're the kind of person who played Ghost of Tsushima and you just really, really enjoyed the melee and you weren't that into the stealth, you just really enjoyed that kind of samurai power trip, I wouldn't recommend this one because just because you still can get that kind of power trip. Eivor is actually really, really strong. I mean, she is a Viking. She's super tough. So you can still definitely get that power trip, but you don't have that cinematicness to the combat. So if you really like that kind of cinematic combat, this isn't going to pay off like that. But other than that, I think, yeah, it's definitely for people who like Assassin's Creed, the newer style of Assassin's Creed games. And definitely people who like these kind of stealth action hybrids like this or Ghost of Tsushima or to an extent Horizon Zero Dawn. I think the same group of people still is going to enjoy it.
Okay.
Still are going to enjoy it. Yeah.
Very cool, very cool. Any last thoughts before we move on?
No, I think I covered all my points.
Very cool. Then let's get into Cyberpunk.
Excellent.
Okay, excuse the music. So I have been playing Cyberpunk. The video you guys are gonna watch today is my. So as usual, you cannot see me because it's just. And for Cyberpunk, if you don't know, was developed and published the game run better. They are and developers working the Witcher games, who are involved. I'm gonna get on with the show. And yeah, they're pretty famous. They're the owners of GOG.com, which is where I bought my CD. Which is where last time I played this, I was in the hotel. It is available on all current and last-gen consoles. I was PC my way Stadia. It is only available streaming on the Stadia as of the moment. No Mac or Linux at the moment. You play as a character in a cyberpunk universe. And for those people who don't know what a cyberpunk is sort of like the melding of man and machine and the idea of transhumanism, that people can be better than what they are with the addition of technology. With lots of sort of colors and neon and a more corporate universe. You see that in movies and TV shows. So when the game starts, you get to choose your body, you get to choose your body type, fat or thin, skin color, eye color, tattoos. You get to choose the sizes of different things. And yeah, at the start of the game, you get to choose 3 classes. I chose Corpo, which is like the official name, and the 2 other names which I don't remember. One is like a gangster class, and one is like a freedom fighter. I mean, I chose Corpo just because I'm like, I don't want to be a gangster, and the freedom fighter was more like an anarchist freedom fighter, which is something I'm not into. Alright, let's try this. There's a whole story, but basically in the story that I chose, I work for this big corporation. And suddenly, I do something wrong, and I get kicked out of the corporation. And in this world, in Cyberpunk 2077, corporations rule the world, and they are the powers, and government is minimal. Is there, but it's minimal. You play. So eventually, when you get kicked out of the corporation, you play a runner, someone without an affiliation. You're sort of like a mercenary. You start off the game with your friend Jackie Wells. He is like a bit Hispanic and throws a lot of Spanish around, like a gringo and Nino and a lot of other words that I like it because I went to university with a bunch of Hispanic people. But if you're playing the English version and you've never heard these words, they may sound a bit strange. And from there you do missions together. I mean, including last night, I've only played about 8 hours so far, and I just finished Act 1. Damn camera. And I was like, oh my god, I just realized this last night as I was playing it, that 8 hours was literally pretty much the tutorial. Because after Act 1, you finally get to encounter and you got to see the advertisement. You get to encounter Johnny Silverhand, which is the guy played by Keanu Reeves, and that's where the real game starts. I'm like, 8 hours for a tutorial. That's got to be the world's longest tutorial. Right. But that's pretty much the story so far. Any thoughts so far, Ed?
Yeah. So you said you got it on GOG. Since that is owned by CD Projekt, is it cheaper or is it basically the same price as anywhere?
Same price. I've talked to a few people about this, that the advantage of GOG is that you do get a lot of extra stuff. Not a lot, but you get some extra stuff. So I looked at Epic, I looked at Steam. I've actually done a video about this as well, similar to my Godfall video. Check that out. That Steam and Epic, if you had pre-ordered it, you would have got like a comic, would have got some wallpaper, but if you ordered on GOG, you got all the stuff from the Steam and Epic pre-orders, plus you get extra stuff which is like mobile wallpapers, which is a
So
soundtrack,
Bug, why don't
which
you?
is an extra
Maybe she'd
comic
still
book.
be alive if we hadn't been so gung fucking home.
Okay, so basically you get all the pre-order stuff, but you don't
Yes,
have to.
and CD Projekt Red gets 100% of the money, of course, which is the advantage of God.
Okay. And so you said you can try the different body types, like, big or fat or thin.
You
Or
want
whatever.
damn lip?
I actually heard that some people were complaining about the limitations. They said that actually you're still basically like there's no sliders. You're just locked into certain body types, kind of.
Um, sliders in the sense of changing the size of stuff.
Yeah, like they said, like for example, one of the things that I read, they were specifically this person was talking about how when CD Projekt was talking about Cyberpunk, they were saying, "Oh, we're gonna have this kind of, we're gonna allow you to have gender uh, diversity, I guess you would say it. So you can play as whatever you want. You could have a male character with a female body, but they were saying that there's no real, you can't really make a person androgynous. You're either like super masculine or super feminine. There's no, you're kind of like maybe three archetypes or whatever, and you just have to play within those three. You can't really create a body that you want in a way. I mean, how did you feel about the character creation?
I mean, I felt it was sufficient, but I can see that now. Like now that like you explained the slider comment. Yeah, I mean it is pretty limited in that sense. Um, so definitely, if you wanted to play, you know, someone who is androgynous, that would be fairly difficult. Yes. Oh, it would be
Okay.
impossible because you're totally right. There are no options for that at the moment. And I mean, given the issues with the game, I don't imagine them addressing that in the near future.
Probably not one of their higher priorities.
Exactly.
And so you said there's three classes at the beginning. Do those actually affect your abilities or what you can do, or is it just basically changes the introduction to the story?
They affect because later on you have options in dialogue trees, and certain options work better because you chose a certain path. So, if you watch some of my other streams, you'll see I have a dialogue option called Corpo, and of course, that option only comes out in a scene where you can say, "Hey, I've had this corporate experience," and that actually opens up other options in the dialogue because of that. And again, I'm not playing the other stuff, so I don't know, but I can imagine the sort of street life or the freedom fighter option will open up an option in a relevant scenario.
So it's kind of similar to, say, a Bethesda game where, for instance, if your charisma is high enough, then you have certain special things you can say. Or in Fallout, if your intelligence is above a certain level, then you have extra kind of dialogue options, kind of like that.
Exactly, exactly. But this is very much localized so that in a particular situation you have two choices, and the third choice will be the one based on your background that you chose.
Okay. And so this doesn't affect the gameplay at all in terms of like what abilities you can equip or your hacking ability or anything like that.
No, it doesn't because your hacking ability or that kind of stuff is influenced by the stats that you choose after you create your person.
Okay, so like a freedom fighter isn't just inherently better at hacking, and a gangster is inherently
No, no,
better at
no.
combat or something
That's,
like
I mean, the initial start affects the story.
that. Okay. All right. Well, that's all my questions for this part so far.
All right. So what I love the voice acting. The characters have this really realistic sound. It doesn't even seem like it's voice acted in a sense. It seems like it's like very much like a movie sound. And in the beginning, and when I played, it's like when Jackie, your friend, and V is who you are, interact. It seems like they've known each other forever, and the voices have this sort of like energetic timbre, and it just like very realistic. It doesn't seem like it's being voice acted. It doesn't seem fake. It just feels really good. The choices seem very meaningful, of course, but that's not surprising given that it is a CD Projekt Red game. Choices definitely help from the beginning of the game in the first hour right until when I finished playing yesterday. The world is colorful and Delphi fits the idea of cyberpunk, and it's definitely very cool, very atmospheric, and I mean I spent a lot of time thinking about this yesterday when I was typing this out for preparing for the show, and I'm like, okay, what do I really like? And that's it actually.
That's a short list.
Yeah, I mean it is. I was like thinking about gun combat. I'm like, no, music. I don't really listen to much music anyway. The music is decent, but I mean I wouldn't go on to say it's like. And again, that's just me. Sound design also again not great. Not bad, but not great. Um, yeah, and I mean the look of stuff again. Yeah, yeah, is yes, that's it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember playing The Witcher, and the one thing that I really liked was actually the voice acting and just some of the subtle things that they would have, like facial animations. If maybe you could tell somebody was slightly amused by something, they did really, really well with that. Now, I remember them saying with The Witcher that the game was too long, and so they said we're going to make this game shorter, or we're going to make Cyberpunk shorter, but we're going to give you a lot more options. So there's a lot more replayability than there was in The Witcher. So, if you played The Witcher, it's really, really long. You can play it again. But if you've played it maybe, say, 3 times, you've basically gone through every option. And they said this one is going to be a lot shorter than The Witcher, but there's going to be a lot more options. So you could play it maybe 10 times and have something new each time. Now, do you really feel like there have been a lot of situations where things could have gone very differently? Or has it felt fairly linear
Oh no,
like
definitely.
that?
And I think that goes back into choosing your gangster or your freedom fighter or your corporal class. Like I mean, in the first 8 hours, I could have seen two situations that would have gone differently if I had chosen the gangster, if I had chosen the freedom fighter.
Okay. So you would say that this game definitely has replay value.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I won't replay it, given the amount of stuff that you and I both have to play, but I can definitely see somebody, maybe even some middle-aged gamers, the kind of gamer who likes to play all sides of things, or the completionists, saying, okay, I finished this run, I'm gonna play the gangster run, and the combat and the dialogue options, they're definitely places where because I was a corporal, I had to fight, but if I was another class, I wouldn't have had to fight.
Oh, interesting. Well, maybe I should have to avoid this game. I remember playing Dragon Age. I'll always play Dragon Age through 2 or 3 times just to try like all the different races and stuff like that. So this one would be quite the chore. Do you have any idea about how long you think it's going to be, or so you're what 40 hours in now?
No, 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 8 hours.
You're 8 hours into the game.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant 8 hours was the introduction.
8 hours was the introduction.
So you just got out of the introduction.
Pretty much. Because remember last week I was playing Breakpoint with my brothers almost every 3 or 4 times in the evening.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
All right. So you probably have no idea how long this is going to be then, huh?
I do have an idea. I mean, one of the things I will go into the I don't like stuff is that I was thinking is like you start off the game, right, and you've got all these extra side missions and stuff, but actually the story pushes you to sort of like finish the sort of Act 1 introduction sequence.
Okay.
So I'm really looking forward. I'm hoping in Act 2 I get more of a choice where I can actually do what I want to do without having to feel like the story is pushing me to do this part, do this part, do the main story. So I'm hoping. So when I ended up yesterday's stream, I said like I'll be playing Thursday probably, and I'm hoping that in Thursday's stream I'll be able to actually feel the freedom of like what a typical open world game gives you, that you can do what you want.
Okay. Now, if you really wanted to, could you go off the beaten path and kind of go wherever you want, or is it really guided so far?
You could. I mean, I've tried to. I mean, in the 8 hour introduction sequence, but you get phone calls, you get texts like, "Where are you? I'm waiting for you here."
So it's kind of the what was that Grand Theft Auto 4 with Nico, and he's like, "Hey man, you want to go bowling?" Like that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's really irritating. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm gonna get this done and over with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. So, what did you not like? Since apparently that's going to be a longer list.
UI is super cluttered, hard to find where you need to do things. Like when you're playing the first 8 hours and you get into the game, you're like, okay, and you press M for map, you're like, oh my god, there's so much stuff here. And a lot of stuff isn't explained, like in the UI, in the game in general. Like, I don't like walking around and driving stuff. I prefer fast travel just to make the most out of my limited gaming time. And I could not figure out how to fast travel. And only after fiddling around, I'm like, oh, there's this place in the game, and there are like 8 fast travel stations in the world. Okay, cool. I don't like driving around. There are some portions in the game where you get in these automated cars, automated flying helicopters, and you just have to wait and look at the city. I'm like, wow, okay, the city's pretty. I know that. I don't want to sit through it. There are options you can skip dialogue in the game, but I wish you could skip those driving scenes just to make things go faster. And I know that ruins the experience, but that's just for me and maybe other people who have a limited gaming time. This first 8 hours could definitely use some improvement. You know, if it is a so-called tutorial, it's definitely too long, and I wish they had given you more freedom. I wish they had explained stuff better. The gun combat is acceptable, but I mean, the sounds I mean, for the excellent voice acting and the story, the guns themselves don't have this sort of like really nice sound to them. Like to me, Borderlands 3 had amazing gun sounds. And the guns I have played in the beginning of the game just sound kind of empty and not really have that like oomph that you associated with cool gun sounds in a game. The combat itself is okay, but then again, I mean, like if you watch the clip that's attached to me right now, you'll see me doing a lot of shooting, and you can see like sometimes I'm aiming down the sights and I'm shooting a guy like 20 times or 30 times. It's just it takes too long to kill somebody, and you lose the like the good time to kill makes you feel powerful, makes you feel strong, and you just don't get that in this game, which kind of sucks. So far, maybe you do get it later on, but so far in the game, I feel like, man, I'm this cool cybernetic chick, but I take a long time to kill people, and that kind of sucks. I wish combat could be improved a lot. I mean, basically everything is acceptable. The stuff I'm talking about now is just stuff I don't like, and it's not bad. It's just acceptable. And that's pretty much it, actually.
All right. No, I can definitely relate to things being acceptable. For example, for me, especially when it comes to things like music, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, the music's fine. It hasn't hit me as like, oh, this is bad music, but I couldn't hum a song to you, so it just none of it's memorable. It's like, yeah, it works, but um, kind of like I remember reading a review where people were talking about Marvel music, how you know you listen to the Harry Potter theme, anybody can hum the Harry Potter theme. You say hum Harry Potter, they can do it. The Jurassic Park theme, Star Wars, and then it's great. And then they're like, okay, other than the Avengers theme, hum one song from a Marvel movie, and nobody can do it unless it's Guardians of the Galaxy, just because the music's kind of filler music. So you said the UI is not customizable. I heard, or I was reading something where somebody was saying, "Oh, I can't find my ammo display," and somebody said you have to equip that. So can you customize the UI, or
What I meant is the UI is overly complex,
okay?
and not as in the game you're playing, but like when you press I for inventory and you're looking at all the stuff, you press M for map, and there are just so many details in everything, and it just feels like it's far too complicated.
Okay. And you said you don't really like these long sequences. Now, is there dialogue going on during these sequences, or is it literally just you're sitting in a helicopter looking at the city?
There's dialogue going on, but it's not great.
Super important.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think this will affect replayability for people where you're having to sit through these long sequences over and over and over again?
No, because I mean they're not terribly long, but I mean, I would say it would affect people more in my vein who don't have a lot of time.
Okay. And as far as the world size, I mean, have you been able to explore it pretty successfully? Would you say it's like a good size, or maybe it's a little bit too big, or maybe it's a little bit smaller? You would have liked it a little bit bigger?
Again, I mean, I will start to know from this week what the world size looks like because I was sort of somewhat restricted to following the story in the first 8 hours.
Okay. All right. Well, those are my questions for what you didn't like.
All right, and so as to who would like this game, anyone who's a fantasy project red, anyone with an open mind that can accept a buggy game, though I have not experienced any bugs. The one thing I will mention is that this streams really badly. Even on my AMD Ryzen 3600 1080 GTX, I'm playing this at 1080. I've closed most of the stuff down when I'm streaming. Oh, and I realize why this is like this now. So you always have to close your OBS preview when you're streaming, and I forgot to do that, which is why yesterday's stream was kind of jaggy, which is what you're seeing in the video. Um, but yeah, this game is still heavy on resources, so that's something you have to be aware of if you have a lower end or even a mid-range system. I'm sort of mid-high at the moment, but still, you do need a beefy computer to play it. And of course, if you're on a PS4 or an Xbox One X, this game is just terrible. PS5 and Xbox Series X is definitely much better. PC is still, there are no bugs on the PC, none that I've experienced so far, but definitely keep that in mind. And anyone who likes RPGs and shooters, very much in the Borderlands way, but without the Borderlands humor. So definitely keep that in mind. This is definitely a very serious game. Yesterday's end of Act 1 was really, really sad. I was like, oh god, this is a horrible way to end things. But yeah,
Oh,
overall, enjoying it a lot. I wish I had more time to play it. I'm hoping to play more during Chinese New Year.
okay. And now you said you haven't had any bugs, but I've heard people talking about how the AI doesn't react very well in certain situations. Like if there's gunfire, everybody just stops and gets out of their cars and just crouches down or something like that. The AI not being
I've seen
particularly
that
good.
video. Again, in what I played so far, no problems with the AI in combat. They act normally. Um, yeah.
Now, do you think that's purely just the processing power? Somehow, like things are getting processed weirdly on lower level systems, or do you think they actually made changes to those systems to kind of accommodate the lower processing power and thus took out some of the options that AI could have, or something like that, to simplify?
I would say a lot of this the stuff or bugs is people actually going out and looking for them.
Okay.
I think if you're playing the game, you're unlikely to find stuff.
All right.
Like the video of the guy, with the many people parked on the street, he got out of his car, threw a grenade, and everybody got out of their cars. Why would you, in the middle of the road, get out of your car and throw a grenade? There's no reason for it.
Yeah, the only reason I could think of is maybe he saw people doing that previously, and then he thought, okay, I'm just going to take a video of this real quick. How do I reenact this situation to get it to happen again?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, I think that seeing as you had no glitches, that was going to be my question, but fortunate for you.
Yes.
Now, oh wait, one last. Do you think that this game is going to? Do you think Xbox Series X and PS5 can properly handle it, or do you think you really should be playing on PC?
I've been keeping an eye out for this on Twitter, on our Instagram, and what I've seen on social media is the current generation consoles have no problems at all. Nobody's
Okay, cool.
complained about any. Nobody's complained about glitches. But the PS4 and Xbox One X people, they have complained about it, and the lower end PCs.
Mm, okay. So maybe I will have to check it out eventually.
Eventually, I think you'd enjoy it a lot. But this is, yeah, yeah,
A time sink.
yes.
All right.
Okay, and that is it for today. Sorry if it was a bit shorter than usual, which it was not.
No, it wasn't. I just figured it would be, so I added that into our script there.
But hopefully you still had a good time. If you've got any more questions about Cyberpunk or about Valhalla, just please hit us up.
Yeah, and with the new year, we may be changing up the format a little bit, but we will discuss that later. For now, if you'd like more of Middle Age Gaming, please follow us or drop us a line at Middle Age Gaming 2020 on Twitch, Middle Age Gaming on Instagram, at Gaming Aged on Twitter, or Middle Age Gaming 2020 on Facebook. And of course, you can always email us directly at middleagegaming2020@gmail.com.
Please do. We look forward to hearing from you soon and seeing you later. Have a great day, everyone, and see you in about 5 minutes for after the show. See you guys later.